All right, host. Is this going to break your concentration if I do this the whole time?
100%. 100%. Hey, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of Raised Red, Living Blue. When we had our emotion dump, kind of brain dump,
Yeah.
we didn't even have a name yet.
That's right.
We've officially named this baby.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I feel great. I think the title seems to be well received, and it explains our situation.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it. And I think we're going to be a little more structured moving forward.
Yes, working on it.
We're working on an outline.
Always be improving, but creating.
Yes.
I guess I should start with, hello, Sloan Roden and Jason Will with Raised Red, Living Blue.
Yeah.
I didn't even say our names.
Sloan's taking the role of host.
Yes.
So, that takes time to develop, and it's an authority and leadership role. So we'll see how she does.
Oh, well, thank you. And maybe we can bounce back and forth and share the role. And thinking of our outline, you had this great idea with leading with positivity or gratitude each week. And you kind of came in excited about yours. So will you share with us today?
I will. So this time last year, my wife and I were separated. And so I spent the holidays alone last year. I mean, I ate Thanksgiving dinner with some friends, but was away from my kids and the fam through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all that good stuff. And so I'm just incredibly grateful to be able to spend the holidays with them.
I don't want to cry. I'm like maybe unreasonably emotional hearing that. I think knowing you and Diana, that makes me really happy. It also puts me in a place of, I remember my first holiday season with my parents' divorce, and it's, the ones after you don't remember as much, but that first one is so raw. So I think part of my emotions is you took me back to this place. So, man, you made me really vulnerable all of a sudden. I'm so happy for you.
Well, we're holiday people. I'm a holiday person. I get into the holidays no matter what it is. So when you spend that time alone in, solitude, it's rough.
Yeah.
It really is rough. And, you hear a lot about people that deal with that, like that's their norm. And so the holidays are a really depressing time for them. And so I got a front row seat to what that's like.
Yeah.
But, Diana, on the other hand, got a front row seat to what it was like for the kids. Yeah. And not having, me around and all that stuff, and just having it be an incomplete experience. So, yeah, I'm going to be all in this holiday season and just really happy to say that, things are going well.
Good. What are y'all's plans? Kind of, are y'all going to be here in Birmingham?
Yeah, we're going to stay home through the holiday season and just enjoy spending time with each other. It's been really, really busy. So we like downtime, and Diana loves to watch every Christmas movie there is, whether it's a new Hallmark movie or going back. I mean, I caught her already watching 4 Christmases. She loves that one. So she'll go watch all the classics. We'll go to, what are we going to see at the Alabama Theater? I think we're doing something way different this year. Like last year, they went without me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think if they saw Christmas Vacation. The year before we were together, we saw Elf. This year, we're doing Die Hard. What about y'all? Are y'all going anywhere special or do anything fun?
We're going to the farm.
Okay.
My mom is coming for, I think, a night, kind of come early Thanksgiving morning. It's supposed to be like in the 60s. So I'm going to try to do like outdoor Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh,
If you're going to be in South Alabama and it's going to be warm, I want to kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
Lean into like a little Ina Garten thing. I want to make it easy. So I'm thinking like a batch cocktail. So no one's like mixing drinks. I want to try to do the turkey on the charcoal grill, but I might break down this weekend and order a honey baked ham. Who knows?
Well, we have one of those, the infrared one that runs off of propane. If you want to borrow that one, it works really, really well. It's like fried turkey without the dangerousness of explosions or extremely bad burns. So just let me know. All right. We're going to take a little break. We'll be right back.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, host.
Okay.
You're back after our commercial break with no sponsors.
we're putting it out in the universe.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to start and go off script a little bit and put this out there that kind of some intentionality around this. I don't want us to be committing career suicide.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to humanize some of these topics and how, like, maybe we interpret them and feel about them, conversations we've had with other people. Because when I take a step back and like cut out the noise, it really seems like a lot of us are fighting for the same things. We just have a different viewpoint on how to get there. I think the economy might be the most simple one. Like, I personally don't believe trickle-down economics is effective, but I am for implementing policies that bolster the economy. And other people want to also improve the economy, and they believe in a different set. So when I try to get there, it makes me like not feel humanizing is the only way to put it. So with that, I want this to be, we're about creating a community, but also want to be very inclusive in our conversation, because I think that's one of the problems we're having.
Well, I mean, I would say this. I try to, being raised red, I still have a lot of right-leaning tendencies and viewpoints and mindsets. I just feel like I've evolved. I feel like my mindset, my outlook has evolved. In terms of being more open-minded. The older I get, it's more about a longer table than a higher fence, let's say.
Yes, that's a great one, and it's so visual. I love that.
Well, so I've been into politics since I was a little kid, and
give a little more into that.
That was a way I think I could get some time with my dad when I was younger.
Yeah,
just watching the news, and 60 Minutes was always on, on Sundays. Meet the Press. So it was just, grew up loving those shows just because they were on, and it was a way for me to kind of get some hang time with my dad. And then on Sundays, I still watch Meet the Press, but I also like to watch Fox News Sunday to see what they're talking about. Yeah. So just to see what kind of both sides of the argument are. And I do, like you said, I found a lot of commonalities in terms of what the common denominator subject matter is. It's just a much different approach to how it's delivered. Yeah. And that's probably why I gravitate to CNN so much, because I feel like they very consistently bring in voices from both sides. I would say it's more predominant left leaning, but they've got the right people there to push back, and they push back hard on that show, and they let them do it. They encourage it. So as long as it's not false information. Right.
I know for any rooms I'm in, especially if it's, board meetings or executive committee meetings for things that I'm involved in, as long as I have the opportunity to state my side and my position and either speak for or against, the motion or whatever has come to the table, then everybody gets their say and we take a vote. And especially in those rooms, you then, after that, you don't have a personal opinion. You have the stance of the group. But if I have an opportunity to say my piece and everybody else does, and we do it in a very constructive manner, that's what I'm grateful for. It's not, don't silence people or shame them. Because then it's some of those tables that I've been at that make me realize, we do have so much more in common than our differences.
Yeah, I think that would be a great outcome for this podcast. When I saw, this is interesting, that women were such a large portion of the electorate, and that democracy was so important to Americans, I was like, she got this in the bag. Yeah. But 53% of white women voted for Trump. The Republicans were more concerned about democracy based on the misinformation, that came out of the Trump camp, but also from governments that seek to divide us. This is, this would be one like very noble, mission of this podcast and others, is just, to try to combat that, because that's what the world wants.
On that point, there are, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it quickly, but there are some kind of memes going around that essentially says, like, if you don't vote the way I do, like, we can no longer be friends. And some people are saying it's not just who you vote for, it's about like what your vote says and my rights. And when you see those things, how do you feel? And what's like your personal perspective on that stance?
Well, I think they're funny. I mean, there's one with a black guy that's pretty funny. He's just like, full stop. If you voted for this person, you still believe that. I think it should be humor. I want to see humor come like way back full circle into a lot of this stuff. I think it's really timely right now that we're talking about this stuff heading into the Thanksgiving holiday, because, there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations that are going to be had around the Thanksgiving table this year, as there have been, the last several years, which would include people being uninvited, disinvited, just missing from the festivities because they don't want to hear these things. I talk a lot about this just, outside of this podcast, about how I just would like to go to an event and not have to hear the, Biden being brought up, or let's go Brandon, or anything about Trump or MAGA or any of that stuff. And I don't know how it is. I don't, being surrounded by, red-leaning folks in a red-leaning state, I see people on the right as being more of the instigator of that stuff around dinner parties, holiday gatherings and things like that. I see more left-leaning people keeping it to themselves, but I'm not in a, highly liberal circle of influence.
Right. Yeah. The things that we experience and make us uncomfortable could be happening to conservatives in more, liberal areas, where, last week we talked about, I'm like, oh, I'm very uncomfortable when people just say things and assume I'm a Republican. I would think it happens kind of wherever, one side is the majority and another is a minority.
I think if people could maybe have a conversation and lay down the ground rules, like you guys have, maybe they could enjoy the holiday season. Just like, listen, let's all agree, no political discussions. Let's not talk about wars or anything. Let's just enjoy each other's time together. Because what were Steph's parents? What way did they lean?
I have a theory that if Steph's mom had been born a little later and maybe not in South Alabama, I think she would have been liberal. She was very privy to people in, children in very unfortunate situations. Like, she was the one who went and like got the kids from the home and took them to where they were being placed. So she could see, one side, but also could see programs that are provided to help people. And just something that's like the example I have. But just some other things I've learned. I'm like, oh man, I think she kind of had a little liberal in there working. They, during the pandemic, stopped watching Fox and Friends in the morning. They were just like, this isn't how we want to start our day. And they began their day by going to the front porch and having their coffee and looking over the land and pasture and taking a step away from kind of the news being entertainment. They're kind of seeing like the train is moving in a direction we're not sure if those are all observations and not based on conversation. So
yeah,
I will give that disclosure.
That's interesting. I just thought to politicize the pandemic was just a total wrong approach.
Well, and
I
still
never
is
understood
happening.
it. Yeah, I never understood it. Every single economy out there, thriving economy, was negatively impacted by inflation due to COVID. You know, this was a global pandemic. We have a global economy. You know, and the incumbents of all these, I would say, democracies, you know, they all got ousted. They all got held to their feet to the fire based on the economic reaction to, you know, the pandemic. And, you know, it's unfortunate that people aren't better informed, but, you know, that could be interpreted as some kind of elitist position. And so looking at the other side, which I've really been trying to make more of an effort to do, this was an interesting thing that came up, is that when you're a single mom and you're broke, or you don't know how you're going to put food on the table, you're financially stressed, you know, you don't have time. If you're, you know, a single mom, you don't have a safety net, you don't have time to worry about global pandemics and things like that. You just want relief. You just want help. And if one side is saying, we hear you, we see you, we're focused on bringing you help, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
You're not really concerned about all the other things that are very, very credible, like misogyny and women's, you know, productive rights and things like that.
Yeah. That's a really like succinct way to put it. Like people that are hurting and they, you know, they're like, yes, someone is saying, we see you and we hear you and we are going to implement policies that are going to help you. That is very appealing to everybody. And I will say, I didn't see it as this, so I'm trying to, I'd like your opinion on it, and then but also like how it kind of gets sideways is, it was like, we had one side that was like, the economy and we're hurting and how are we going to fix it? And they viewed, you know, the left as identity politics.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't understand the term identity politics, because as a woman and as a queer person, I think of things, okay, well, this affects me and how I'm able to live my life. I don't think of it as some like, I don't know, what is your interpretation of it, or what have you heard as why that term is almost said like with this like negative context?
Yeah. So how what we're specifically talking to is like, correct me if I'm wrong here, like this was the research is starting to come back to show that this was a very damning political ad that we saw in the South, particularly. I mean, it was like constant, but it was like, you know, Kamala's into the pronouns of people. She's into they, them, we're for you.
Right.
So, and one of the problems that I, you know, think was not properly addressed. I mean, I saw the transgender prisoner operation commercial or political ad as very damning. It did not make sense to me, and I think she should have come out and said, "Hey, that was a batshit crazy stance." But it was also used to help Ted Cruz win in Texas against Colin Allred, which I think Colin was a much better candidate. But they didn't come out and address it. They didn't say like, this is why we said that or supported that. Just not addressing it is not a good way to do it, because then it just legitimizes the other side.
I did read where that was something she said in 2019 before she was vice president. And one side that I was reading was it was her stance, while it was controversial and made for a really damning but also powerful political ad, depending on what side you're on. It set this precedent in California that now is growing recognition among other states of how trans men and women are treated in prisons. And just like, everyone wants to go to, well, I don't want a men and little girl sports. And my first thing is like, okay, well, a grown man shouldn't be playing youth sports to begin with. Man, it's sticky, and
it's a rabbit hole. I mean, it's just like,
the argument that people are transitioning or are like coming out as gay because it's the thing to do and it's cool, or like this whole TikTok trend is going around that's like, just because you're ugly and not cool doesn't mean you need to transition. And it's like, my own mother told me that, like, I know being gay is cool now, but like I never thought you'd go that far to like be different.
Yeah, or be accepted. It's just,
and that's heartbreaking, because you have what people don't understand there is a long, for me, there was a lot of thinking and self-reflecting and things that like you are working with in yourself before you, one, admit it to yourself. That's a big step. And then going to admit it to others. To be doing that like as a farce, to me, it's so disrespectful and it's so close-minded. And that tells me like, okay, you don't have anybody in your life who's in the queer community. And not like oh, well, I have a gay friend or my hairdresser's gay. No. I'm talking about like, you don't have someone in your life that you have created a relationship enough for that person to open up. It is not a queer person's job to teach you why it is hard being gay or what they've been through or how they have sex. God, all the fucking questions over that. Like, again, the internet, like, figure it out. Or it's just like it's not a black person's job to teach white people how to be an anti-racist. But those arguments just show me that you've not had exposure to someone that is close to you who's been through those things to, again, humanize this other side.
I think exposure is a great word and really properly identifies what's lacking in a lot of people's lives, where their beliefs come from. That's what I think. A lack of exposure fosters judgment over curiosity. And so I don't know, I'm fascinated by this, this conversation, by like, I want to dive into like when this, like you started to kind of question, what was going on with you, like biologically, and then how that, related to all the aspects of your life, which, you have promised us an episode on that, but you need some time to like gather your thoughts and come to, find your voice in that regard, because, making that episode, we were going to make that, this was going to be that episode.
I appreciate for you not making me, like, putting me on the spot so quick.
Right before Thanksgiving, I mean, you're like, what if my mom listens to it? And I mean, this could blow up our Thanksgiving.
I'm not sending this podcast to my mother.
There's a lot of things.
If she finds it, then that's the universe, but I'm not sending it to her.
Yeah. So, but I would just say this to people out there, just to get back on topic.
Yep.
For, I think the point we're trying to make for the season that is upon us here is that, when I hear you say that your mom thought that your queerness was, the motivation for it was to be accepted or to be popular or to be cool. And I know for a fact that there's other beliefs that she has that are very disturbing and would be totally justified for you to go, you know what? It's just me and Steph maybe having a Friendsgiving at the farm this year. F you, family. So just, I think that's a great example for, number one, the power of boundaries. Like, we know we can't go there. We know it's going to blow things up.
Yep.
But also, I think, we've used the word grace. Obviously, for you, forgiveness is a very important word. Being able to forgive her for saying those things, because I think somebody could believe in their heart that these are unforgivable. stances, words, phrases, beliefs, all that stuff. And because of the perspective and the exposure that you all had to the abrupt loss of Steph's parents, and that's why I asked, like, what way did they lean? Because I'm sure, if they were the MAGA-ist of MAGA people, Steph would be like, man, I wish they were here for Thanksgiving.
Well, and they were a family that didn't really talk politics, which was nice.
Amen to that.
You don't talk about like the big things. You kind of find almost like the tertiary things. And I think those are the ones that like we for sure have where there's more overlap. Like Steph's dad raised cattle, so subsidies or grants for farmers was, very, near and dear to their hearts, and access to good quality, not only just produce, but I guess meat, beef, chicken, and just some of those things where there's more commonalities than differences. But they were not the ones to just talk headlines and stuff. But it's of course every single day wishes they were still here regardless of, what their beliefs were. And they were always wonderful to me and accepting, but also like, from a different generation. And unfortunately, we never, with them alive, crossed that bridge of getting married, or I assume they would have been there, but it just didn't so much like talk about it. So I don't, again, it's one of those I can go off of how they treated me and how they accepted me. And, sometimes people don't know how to say it, but their actions around it speak louder.
Love that. This holiday season, let's think from a mindset of a longer table, not a higher fence. Let's set some boundaries to make sure, things don't get sideways after we've had too much champagne or wine or whatever the case may be.
And if you need to set those boundaries for you and your family, like your health and your mental state, and especially like if you're a parent, like the protection of your children is the most important. Like grace is something I'm really trying to work towards, and this is the path I've chosen. And I want to be open-minded and respect people for the ones they've chosen. And if any of y'all are out there and y'all have friends that are in these positions, extend that table for them.
Love it. All right, next up we're going to do Press Pass, and I'm going to go over a couple headlines, get your thoughts on that, and then that'll be the wrap on episode 2.
So let's rock and roll.
All right, so during the Press Pass, we'll see how this evolves, but my thought was, let's grab a local headline, let's grab a national headline, and discuss. The local headline I thought was interesting that I'm just dying to get your take on is, this war on books, which has kind of evolved into a war on librarians.
Right.
But this was a headline that came straight from AL.com. Extremist, Alabama GOP chair, anti-censorship group blast each other. So AL GOP chair and the anti-censorship groups got into it here. There's been a lot of back and forth. The anti-censorship group here in Alabama is called Read Freely Alabama. So Read Freely Alabama versus Alabama GOP chair. And the Alabama GOP chair has taken over as chair of the Alabama State Public Library Service.
I know that's a mouthful.
So my question to you, Sloan, is, are there libraries in our public school system right now that have sexually inappropriate books in them that are going to turn our kids gay?
Well, that, I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have any school-age children. I don't know if, I can just like walk up in Bluff Park Elementary and look at their look at their children's books. But here's one quote that I got from the article. Read Freely Alabama says that books about sex toys should not be in children's sections at libraries. And like, I feel like that's a stance like we can all get with. There should be an age limit on some sexually explicit material, even though I feel like every kid who was born in the 80s or 90s, when it got to The Birds and the Bees, I got the 2 books, Where Did I Come From and What's Happening to You?
Yeah.
So my mother didn't have to talk about sex or puberty. You could argue that was a sexually explicit book. The 2 people, they were a little hug in the bed. That's how sex was explained. I digress. So like that's like, well, yes, I get that. And then here's a quote. Fortunately, no such books are or have ever been in any children's sections in Alabama libraries. Someone in Gadsden said, it's just simply for being LGBT inclusive. And I think that goes to exposure, like we were talking about before. If you are in Etowah County, Alabama, do you even know gay people? Like, are they around? Like, are you having these thoughts and feelings like lots of kids have during puberty? It is a very glad I don't ever have to go back there. But trying to figure it out, and you can't like put a finger on it, and then like you feel different. Like, books are a wonderful escape for many reasons, including education and expanding your mind. I think access to that, especially for children, if they are not, if you're in an area where there's not a lot of diversity, is very important. Maybe they don't even think they're gay. They just want to learn about it because they've seen it on TV, and then they read a book in middle school or elementary school, and then they come across a gay person later. They kind of know how to act and don't treat that person like they're a clown.
First of all, we got to recognize, like, let's just look back at history. History a lot of times can be our greatest teacher, and look at societies, look at government, look at cultures that started banning books, burning books.
Yep.
I mean, this is talking about slippery slopes. Do we really want to go down this path? But also there's an important, fact to point out here about free speech. It seems like, and gonna, straddle both sides of the fence here for a second. Okay. There seems to be a free speech but, or I'm pro free speech but, or don't limit my free speech but. So, like the right is like, we want to not have our rights infringed upon, but, or unless it talks about, unless you're going to talk about LGBTQ issues or something we don't agree with, or
even race,
abortion, race. Yeah, there's a lot of things in there. And, I don't know, the left side would be like, we're for free speech, but, unless it's about election denialism, I don't know. Or what would be some other topics that maybe the left would go, let's use this as an analogy. Social media censorship of false. I had this experience. Did you experience this during the election cycle? Go to or find yourself on a Republican's Facebook page and see that one of their posts was blacked out for being deemed false information. So I see it on both sides, but there was a point that was made on a podcast that I was listening to just this morning that really clarified this. We as humans, as Americans, as supporters of the Constitution, should be allowed to say whatever we want to say, regardless of its, what the origin of the speech is, if it comes from hate or misinformation or, fact or emotion or wherever it comes from. But computers should not. Computers do not get the same rights that we get as humans. And what that was saying is that, that AI, there was these, like Iran, Russia, China, governments and their associates seek to create disruption in the United States. And AI is a powerful tool. And so a lot of these people are forming opinions based on something that a foreign government's computer created.
Well, and I know there was one specific AI photograph, or no, it wouldn't be a photograph. What would you? Some sort of digital creation by AI.
Yeah.
It was after Hurricane Helene, and he was in a navy blue suit, but with like an orange life jacket on, and he and maybe the governor, it was supposed to be the governor of North Carolina, were wading through knee-deep water. And it was all ad.
Who's the he?
I think it was the North Carolina governor.
And who else? Was that it?
Trump. 47. But it's like that was not real. Like I feel like we've lived 3 lives since Hurricane Helene. But at that point, I think when the photo was generated, that's the word I'm looking for. Like, I don't think Trump had visited North Carolina yet. I think he was like, so that's so scary.
I just think there is a level of personal responsibility that should be incorporated in free speech. Just because you have the freedom to say things doesn't mean that you should. Doesn't mean that it's appropriate.
Yeah. But also, like, just really, like, misinformation and false information and all that is just lies. Like, you shouldn't do that either.
Right.
Isn't it one of the 10 Commandments?
Well, oh my God.
Okay.
Talking about a very deep rabbit hole.
My bad.
But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right. But these people don't feel like it's misinformation because it's, I think it just goes back to the common denominator of this episode, which you so appropriately pointed out, was exposure.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're not being exposed to things.
And just on that real quick, and we've got to wrap up. We said 20 minutes ago we were going to wrap up. Thank y'all for this journey. I saw a clip on Instagram this morning, which, man, the U.S. representatives and the senators, and with Instagram now, like, who needs C-SPAN? It is wild up in there.
Yeah.
But I saw a video and then wanted to learn more about it, and going to the internet to then, okay, what's the argument here? And then kind of what's the backstory on it. It was so hard for me to A, find information, and B, try to find unbiased information. Like, the first one I opened was a paywall. The next person gave a tidbit, but then sent you to another link that you then had to sign up for. I couldn't find anything on like New York Times or Associated Press. So then I thought, okay, let me just kind of table this one for later, and it will be I don't want to bring a topic when I'm like, saw this video on the gram and I don't have any basis on it. So even with something as simple as that, a video that is now going viral, it's hard to find context and good reporting, on the topics. And it takes work, and a lot of people, we all have jobs and families to care for, and we shouldn't have to fact check our news. And now we're here, and that then gets into, I can see where people don't have trust and respect for reporters anymore, because what's real and what's fake, like what is our real images and what are fake images.
Yeah, it's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And people just don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the luxury of time to research and try to validate things. And I would just say this as a closing statement. Mm-hmm. It was weird, like fact checking became a negative thing during this campaign cycle for the right. It's like the one debate Trump participated in, the things I heard from the right-wing media, and which trickled down to my friends on the right, was, it was 3 against 1. But, like, I feel like we should be concerned about leaders who don't want to be fact-checked. Just let that sink in.
Either side.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, fact checking should be the standard, But anyway, so next episode, we're going to cover the blue bracelet movement. Mm-hmm. And I would just say this to folks out there: if there's something you want us to cover, get in touch with us. We're pretty easy to get in touch with. Mm-hmm. But let's do plugs. What do you want to plug this week before we go? Anything?
Oh, no, I'm good.
You're good?
Yep. You can take the floor.
Hey, well, if you're watching this, somebody that wants to own a lake house or is dreaming about it, go to smithlakeactivelistings.com. Uh-huh. You want to call or text me about a topic you want us to cover, 251-583-9728. And with that, we will be back with another episode. Hopefully.
See y'all later.